Good evening and welcome to the Library of Congress. Happy Women's History Month. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's program, First Ladies, Historical Fiction about Pioneering Black Women. My name is Monica Valentine and I am a program specialist here at the library. Let me introduce you to tonight's amazing authors. First, we have Victoria Christopher Murray, who is the New York Times bestselling author of more than 30 novels, including The Personal Librarian and The First Ladies. Both novels Victoria co-wrote with Marie Benedict. Victoria holds an MBA from the New York Stern School of Business. Please welcome Victoria Christopher Murray. We're also joined by Joshunda Sanders, who's an award-winning author, journalist, and speechwriter, a former Obama administration political appointee as well. Her fiction, essays, and poetry have appeared in dozens of anthologies. She's been awarded residencies and fellowships at Hedgebrook, Lambda Literary, the Key West Literary Seminars, and the Martha's Vineyard Institute for Creative Writing. Women of the Post is her first novel. Please welcome Joshunda. And last but not least, of course, we have Ruth P. Watson, who is the author of numerous novels, including her latest, A Right-Worthy Woman. She's the recipient of the Caversham Fellowship, an artist and writer's residency in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, where she published her first children's book in Zulu, Our Secret Bond. She's a freelance writer and a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Please welcome Ruth P. Watson. We're going to be hearing a little reading from the ladies tonight, so I just want to make sure they all have the copies of their books. All right, ladies, welcome to the Library of Congress. I've heard that you've had a lovely tour, and now we are here with a robust audience who want to hear more about you, your books, and your process. Can each of you tell us briefly how you came across the real-life story of the women you depict in your novels? And we will start with Victoria.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for coming out tonight. This is a great building. I think it's because I kind of like books. So that helps. But this is my second historical fiction novel, and we came across this story from writing our first book. Marie and I wrote a book called The Personal Librarian, and I'm a Black writer, in case you didn't notice, and she's a white writer. And so as we were touring around the country, people really were interested in the story of the personal librarian, but they were more interested in how did this Black writer and white writer write such deep books about race and then become closer. And when we realized that people were as interested in our story as they were the character, we said maybe we should kind of write a book about us. And that's how we came across this friendship. We looked for an interracial friendship. We didn't know that we were going to find one that kind of changed the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I have seen many quotes about your book that mention that the relationship between Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune actually probably laid the foundation for the civil rights movement.
Totally,
yeah.
Totally. The very first desegregation happened because of Eleanor and Mary.
Exactly.
Because FDR gets credit for it, but it was only because those two women said, if you don't do what we want, seriously, so.
Yeah, the power of women. Joshunda, would you like to respond to that for us?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So good to see you. It's great to be here. I learned about the 6888 from reading an obituary of Alice Dixon, who was 106 years old when she passed. And I was actually at Hedgebrook. I had been trying for 10 years to get into this wonderful women's writers residency in the Pacific Northwest. This is at the beginning of the Trump administration, which was very intense for me at that time. And so it was a respite to get away into the lovely Pacific Northwest. I was taking a break from writing, and I read her story. And Alice Dixon had actually changed her name so that Alice was spelled with a Y. And she ended up being the inspiration for one of the characters in the novel, because she decided in basically the 30s that she was going to own her destiny. And the first moment was when she decided to do that was when she changed her name. But I had never heard or been taught anything about the Women's Army Corps. I didn't know that the 688 existed. I didn't know that Black women had served in World War II in any capacity. I thought maybe they could have been nurses, but that was, sort of the extent of the history that I knew. So once I found out about her, I said, oh, I have to find out about this unit. I have to find out about the Women's Army Corps. And of course, Mary McLeod Bethune was hugely instrumental in setting the path and setting the stage for the 688. So it's also just an honor to be here with Victoria and to learn more about Mary McLeod Bethune as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the tie between Mary McLeod Bethune and the 6888th Battalion. Yeah,
The 6888 for short.
6888, that's right, okay. And Ruth, could you respond to the same question?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to see everybody, my friends from everywhere. I mean, my high school friends, my sorors, and just people that I know. Thank you for coming. And of course, the Miss Julianne Morveau,
Yes.
who reached out to me, and we have her here too tonight. So thank you for coming, Julianne. I wanted to say, I ran across Maggie Lena Walker while I was researching Richmond, Virginia, for my first novel. And I thought she was really Madam C.J. Walker. I didn't know anything about her. None of our history books had her in there. And she made an appearance in my very first novel. And then she made an appearance in my second novel. It was like she was haunting me and saying, come write about me. It's time for me to be resurrected. And that's exactly what I did. So I ran across her while researching the city of Richmond, Virginia.
Awesome. Well, we are so glad that you chose to elevate all of these stories. What made you feel like you were just the right people to depict your protagonist's stories? And we will start this time with Ruth and work our way back.
I think I was the right person because I had a genuine interest in economics and a genuine interest in Black women, their struggles, and especially Black women who had not been recognized in America. And I felt that, and I have always been one of those people who's been on the side of the underdog, the person who's not being recognized, the person who's not being seen, the person who's not being understood. And women happen to be those people. And so when Maggie Lena Walker chose me, I didn't choose her. So I want that to be very clear, that the spirits do talk to you. She chose me to write about her. I didn't choose to write. And I'm so glad she did, because it was her time. It was time for people to know that we had a female banker in 1903, not only African American, but also the first female banker and the first Black woman on Wall Street. So she chose me to write about her.
That's beautiful. Joshunda, how did you know you were the right person to tell the story of the 688?
6888.
I'm going to get it right.
I love your answer. It really resonates with me. I mean, I'm definitely a champion of the underdog. I'm from the Bronx. I grew up there. I grew up poor with my mom in the 80s and 90s in New York City. And so when I found this story, I mean, very similar to you, I'm a person who really loves to champion people who are not seen. It's why I became a journalist right out of college, and why I do the work that I do, because I think the visibility specifically of Black women is so important. But specifically about the 6888, I think there's a narrative in our country that Black women, we basically exist to support and serve other people. And I thought it was really important to lift up the work of these women. The main protagonist in Women of the Post goes from working on the Bronx slave market, which is another sort of undercovered part of history, because the North doesn't really like to claim that it had any exploitative labor practices that took advantage of Black women's labor, but of course it did, and we know that. But she goes from the Bronx slave market and basically arguing with her mother about how can you rest? How can you, like, you don't just exist to hold us up and to lift us up, but you also exist to live your life. So I felt like it was important. I think I was the right person to tell this story because I wanted to not only acknowledge the work that they did for each other and to support, you know, the troops and their morale, but also to support their families. You know, the World War II was such an important part of creating the Black middle class, and the way that Black women's work is always invisible, I think is a tragedy in that story because we've been so significant in terms of the work that we've done. And so, yeah, I think we don't talk enough about money. We don't talk about what Black women do to keep our families together. And I felt like it was important for me to lift that up.
And it was easy to choose this book. These two ladies, we were looking for a story that was kind of parallel to us. And we just, I couldn't believe, we could not believe that Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt had this best friendship, this bestie thing going on during Jim Crow and segregation. And Eleanor was such an ally. And she learned so much. She grew because of her friend, Mary McLeod Bethune. And it's very interesting because Marie and I kind of feel that way. In fact, we sometimes say this book is semi-autobiographical because we put in all the real stuff about them, but our editors started saying, well, what did they talk about as girlfriends? And so we said, okay, we just put in what we talk about. Food, clothes, we need to lose weight. I mean, those kinds of things. And so people say, my goodness, their conversation sounded so real. And that was because it was kind of us. And it was really good to, it was easy to write those kinds of things because Marie and I have the same kind of friendship.
Some conversations are evergreen. That makes sense.
That's right.
All right, so we talk a lot in America about the virtues of leadership, but being a pioneer is complex. Could each of you read a short passage that depicts your heroine really wrestling with the world that she inhabits? And we will start with, Victoria.
Okay, so I just have to find it in here. It was interesting because, you know, I don't do very many readings. I was telling you I don't do too many readings because I always say, we're reading to adults. This isn't story time. That's what it feels like.
So this is a treat for you all tonight. She doesn't do this all the time.
Yes, I'm going to try because I'm like, oh my God, I haven't done this since I was 5. Okay, so Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt really changed so much in this country. It is unbelievable the things that they did and how they set out to really build the civil rights movement. I don't think they knew that's what they were doing. And so they had a helper. His name was FDR, and he was the president. And so they really kind of pushed him into doing some things. And this is just the beginning of a scene where they were encouraging, you know, he had the New Deal, and they were encouraging FDR to make sure that you set up an agency for Negroes, that's what we were, you know, and to make sure that Negroes got part of the New Deal, okay? So now this is Mary and Eleanor together, and this actually, a conversation that actually happened August 22nd, 1933. Isn't this lovely, Eleanor says, spreading her arms wide as we walk through the White House rose garden. Sometimes I can't believe I live here. When I had asked Eleanor if we could meet, I had no idea that she would select such stunning surroundings. I inhale the sweet fragrance and I'm reminded of my trip to Europe. Oh, how I wish I could forget the reason I wanted to meet my friend today. This place is way too beautiful for us to have such an ugly discussion. Breathtaking, I tell Eleanor. All that's missing are a few black roses. Eleanor laughs. I agree. We need a few black roses out here and definitely some inside the White House. Even though my mind is focused on the unpleasant discussion before me, I nod. I had told Eleanor about my students and the black roses some time back, and it's very soothing that she remembers. I would venture to guess that my Uncle Teddy's wife, Edith, didn't see too many black roses in her life, Eleanor says. She was the one who fashioned this rose garden. Through the years, it's been updated, of course, and now Franklin and I want to put more of a modern stamp on it. Before I could reply, Tommy, Eleanor's assistant, strides towards us and whispers something to Eleanor. Then my friend turns to me. Would you excuse me for a moment? I have an urgent letter. Of course. I settle down on the bench, grateful that a breeze cools me a bit on this hot August morning. And after a few moments, I reach into my bag for the Pittsburgh Courier. I begin reviewing the headlines, and then I sit up straight as I read, President Roosevelt creates the Office of the Special Advisor on the Economic Status of the Negro. My eyes cannot scan the article fast enough. It's so exciting to see the plans that Eleanor and I began 3 months ago coming to fruition. Why didn't Eleanor tell me that this was going to be announced today? I wonder as I read the president's selection, and then my excitement fades. I glance up when I hear Eleanor's footsteps. She's smiling, but then her smile disappears when she sees my expression. What's wrong, she says. I hand the newspaper to her, and she reads the first line aloud. Through the Secretary of the Interior, President Roosevelt has created the Office of the Special Advisor on the Economic Status of the Negroes. Grinning, she adds, this is so wonderful, Mary. This is the office that we told Franklin to do. He is listening to us. Then she reads the rest of the article, and I stand and pace in front of the roses. Finally, Eleanor looks up. Clark Foreman will be appointed as the special advisor? Her expression has changed from joyful to confused. But Mr. Foreman, he's white, I explode, finishing the sentence for her. We are both familiar with Clark Foreman as he works for the Commission on Interracial Cooperation. They chose a white man? Eleanor sounds as astonished as I feel. How could President Roosevelt do this? I say, feeling like I want to punch the air. Eleanor shakes her head. I cannot believe he went forward with this without even doing the courtesy of informing me. I shouldn't have to find out about this in the newspaper. It seems that the president is not taking our request seriously, I say. Not only is he ignoring us, he's insulting us. Mary, I'm as shocked and disappointed as you are, but I want us both to consider something. Is it possible that this appointment of the white man makes sense? Are you kidding me? The president has established an office for Negro affairs and he put the overseer in charge. Eleanor flinches. That's a bit harsh. He is certainly not the overseer. For the first time, I cannot believe I exploded in front of my friend. I may have overstated the situation, I say, but as you and I have discussed, we don't need white people deciding what's best for Negroes. That's why this appointment doesn't make sense. And I'll stop right there.
Thank you. So you did just fine. Joshunda, we'd love to hear some of Women of the Post from you.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. I mean, I'm not sure about my seat choice over here. Um, what I will say, I'll preface this by saying that Major Charity Adams is an incredible figure in American history that she's starting to get her just due. But she is the highest ranking Black woman in the US Army. She leads the self-contained unit of 855 Black women, in part because of the organizing and the advocacy of Mary McLeod Bethune, the Black press. They finally relent and let Black women go overseas as part of the 688. And in the 688, they're basically clearing this backlog of millions of pieces of mail for the troops who marched on Normandy. No one expected them to be there. So they're wearing men's uniforms because they didn't have uniforms made for them. They're constantly disrespected. They're in Birmingham, England. They end up in Rouen, France. But Charity Adams has to contend with all of the nonsense that Black women have to contend with at sort of a higher level because it is 1944. There's a general named J.G. Nash who is a particular thorn on her side. And so I'll just read a passage when she finally loses her patience and stands up to him. Even as she excelled in most of her officer training and had earned all the bars and stars on her uniform, the tests came frequently, big and small. Charity viewed Nash's visit as just one more of these tests. Knowing the Army the way that she did, the note was only a few days ahead of the surprise visit. She would have to be more prepared and watchful than usual. She had passed this kind of test before, and she would do it again. General Nash appeared at the warehouse where the women worked at 0700 hours on an icy Wednesday morning in early December. He walked through the door of the warehouse, his eyes roaming and taking in the women working in their winter gear, a low hum of conversation, bags and boxes of paper on nearly every table. "General Nash, sir," Charity said. "At ease," he said slowly, like he didn't mean it. He chewed at a toothpick so aggressively his temples pulsed. "I imagine you've been expecting me." "Yes, sir, my women are always ready for inspection." "I'll be the judge of that," he said. Within the next 15 minutes, Charity rang the obnoxious lunchtime bell to signal a break for the first shift. When the women grew quiet, she instructed them to be at ease and informed them that General Nash was there from headquarters for an inspection of their unit. Some of the women shifted in their seats, but mainly they remained quiet and still until Charity said, "Thank you for the moment you just allowed, as you were." They went back to work unfazed. "It's my understanding that there are hundreds more of you," General Nash said in a huff. "Where are the rest?" Charity tried to keep the irritation out of her voice. "Sir, we work 3 different shifts. The other women will start work later tonight and just went to bed." "Sounds irresponsible to me," he said, starting to walk around the women. He stopped to glare at Judy, and then with a puzzled look, Mary Alice. He kept walking, arms folded behind his back, eyes filled with disgust. He stopped near a pile of mail and cleared his throat. He turned to face Charity. "Well, I can't have this kind of half-hearted representation from the battalion, Major. You need a better plan for inspection at least, or else I'll find a white first lieutenant looking for opportunity to show you how it should be done." Shame and anger coursed through Charity. She could feel Abby willing her to keep her temper, to mind her words, but she was turning over the words he used in her mind, and they twisted like a knife in her gut. In the Army, the word first in a platoon and often in rank was reserved for whites. Negro units sometimes got second, third, or fourth, but never first. So she wasn't sure if it was the word white, first, or first lieutenant that made it hard to stay neutral. "Over my dead body, sir," she spat out. Abby gasped audibly. Charity shot her a wilting look. Abby shook her head. It became very quiet in the warehouse. Charity stood taller. She would not yield. She would pass this test.
Thank you, and you were worried about following Victoria. Ruth, can we hear some of A Right Worthy Woman from you?
Yes, let me just say, this book started it starts from 1876. So we know that Maggie Lena Walker was the first female banker in America, but she also did some other things. And I chose something that I thought was compelling, but also of the struggle that it takes for somebody to make something happen in this country, even today. As you know, that it's very difficult for us to get anything accomplished, especially when we're women, but more importantly, for anybody. This is the times that we're in. So I chose this excerpt of Maggie Lena Walker, and I'll start reading it. As a greeting to me, he said, "I told you not to open that emporium, Maggie Walker, but you insisted." Now, let me just stop and tell you the Emporium is the first African-American department store in America as well. "And that is my right," I answered, while the other two stood around me blinking, listening to every word I said. "You are lucky I knew your damn daddy. If not, you have been tossed in the James River just like Willie Mitchell." "How did you know my father? Was he involved in Daddy's murder?" I knew in that moment that Daddy's death was always on Mama's mind. It didn't matter because neither of them would ever own up to it. Nothing would be done anyway, since Daddy was colored. Using his death to threaten me was as destructive as they came. It certainly proved a point, one that colored lives have no value even so many years later. I put my hands down in my dress pocket and held onto my Colt pistol the entire time he was talking. I didn't take his idle threats lightly. Beads of sweat were forming on my nose. "If you're going to withhold my merchandise, then I need to know why. We have been doing business with you for years." He frowned at my comment. "Your emporium is taking money away from Tallhammer and Miller and Rhodes, the finest department stores in town. And they're not going to let you and them uppity niggas in Jackson Ward destroy their businesses. I warned you about this a long time ago," he said, unyielding. "So now you're going to try to shut me down?" I asked, staring straight into his cold blue eyes. Colbert gazed back at me without blinking. He was serious, and my instincts told me he would do anything to prevent my emporium from prospering. We had been doing well, and it was rumored that at least a 15% downslide in customer shopping was affecting the bottom line profits of the major stores. There was no way they would allow our store to continue with the growth we had been experiencing. "We will," he said. "Some of your patrons are already returning to the right stores because you are no longer able to fulfill their needs. Eventually, your store will be completely empty. There will be absolutely nothing left for you to sell." I stood helpless, listening to their threats and accusations. I was not finished with them. I would fight to the end if necessary. As I turned to walk away from them, Colbert hurled at me at my back. Remember, you are not white. You are colored. Know your place and stay there, Maggie Lena Walker. I warned you once before. Now I'm getting tired of telling you. I turned around and said, "This is as much my place as yours. And the Bible has made it very clear. If you could read it, you would understand that I'm not going anywhere. God created all men as equals." He yelled back as I spun to walk off again. "You're not a man, Maggie Lena Walker, even though you think and act like one. You are just a woman." I kept on walking. I knew who I was, and neither Colbert nor anyone else was going to make me feel any different. But his comment about my daddy, Willie, lingered and concerned me. What did he know about him? and how he had died. Besides, the name Colbert bothered me too. Was he my birth father's brother or one of the family members who was as racist as was to be expected in the Jim Crow South? I wasn't sure who he was, but I knew eventually I'd find out. I didn't go home or to the bank or the Emporium. I went directly to the Virginia State Capitol. It was time to speak to someone with some authority. William Hodges Mann was elected governor of the state in 1910. I knew he would at least listen to me. I got into my car and drove down Broad Street and ended up to the Capitol. I had been there many times before, but every visit was different. At times, I had to beg to enter the governor's office. And other times, some generous guard would notice me and allow me to go in without a struggle. The governor was available most of the time, especially for the citizens of Richmond. If a dignitary wasn't visiting or in town, I would be asked to come back. When his assistant saw me, she rolled her eyes. "What do you want now, Maggie Walker?" she asked at the sight of me. I was wondering if I could have a few minutes of Governor Mann's time. I waited for her to offer me a seat, but she did not. Instead, she left me standing right in front of her desk and came back in 10 minutes. "The governor is in a meeting. He can't see you at the moment. You need to come back." "Thank you," I said, and left. I ended up at the Tallhammer building, waiting on Mr. William Tallhammer in the same fashion. I was astounded when I was allowed to come up to his office on the top floor. The sales lady who directed me to his office also followed me there and didn't leave until after his assistant acknowledged her. He invited me inside the spacious room with high ceilings and office furniture more beautiful than anything I've ever seen laid my eyes on. "What can I do for you, Miss Walker?" "May I sit down?" I asked. He glanced up at me from behind his spectacles and told me to have a seat. I sat down in front of his desk. "Mr. Tallhammer, I have an emporium down the street, and I've been informed that you are trying to shut me down, that you do not want me in there." He cleared his throat. "Miss Walker, you need to find a way to take care of your own business. It is not our responsibility to worry about the St. Luke Emporium. We are running it as efficiently as we can, but it's getting more difficult when our mutual suppliers refuse to deliver my orders to our store." "What do I have to do with your operations?" he said in a seemingly concerned tone, though he now propped a foot on the desk. "The vendors are afraid you will stop using them and put them out of business if they continue to deliver products to me. Is there any way you can work with our merchandisers? This is business. My profits have taken a hit since you opened your emporium, and we have served Richmond well for 70 years. We cannot allow you to continue to affect our bottom line." Isn't competition good? I thought to myself. The visit had been fruitless. He was just as racist as the rest of them and would only respect other white competitors like Millen Rhodes. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Tallhammer." As I left, I searched for my handkerchief to wipe the beads of sweat dripping down the side of my face. It wasn't hot outside, but I was boiling on the inside. That was it. This matter would have to be settled by our customers. Did they want the emporium? Would they continue to support us? And how much of this could stand before they would return to shopping at the other stores? First, I would need to remind them of their loyalty to the Jackson Ward community. We weren't going down without a fight. Immediately, I called for a meeting at the order headquarters. John Mitchell Jr. put out a call to action to the community. The St. Luke Herald reached out to all subscribers. When we finally convened, obscenities were hurled at me as I stood at the podium. I thought you promised us a store of our own in our neighborhood, but what good is it if the shelves are empty? Someone asked. Another deep voice said, we can't find anything these days. What is going on, Mrs. Walker? Armstead stood up and shouted over the crowd. Now listen here. My wife has worked day and night for the Jackson Ward community, and this is the treatment you give her? He paused while the voices around him quieted before continuing. Without her tireless efforts, most of you would not own a business or have enough money to shop with. What is wrong with you people? We just want to know, will you be restocking the Emporium, Fanny said. I sat still with my head held down, head high, as the insults subsided. When all the shouts of disappointment dwindled, I stood up and cleared my throat.
Wow. So all of these passages are striking, and in a sense, they all revolve around confrontations, either directly with men in positions of power or the more subtle conversation in the First Ladies where Mary is grappling with the harsh truths with Eleanor. Can you each speak to how your protagonists navigate these confrontations, how they handle the challenges of the world and lead us forward? And we'll start with Victoria.
I put this down. You know, one of the things I loved about this book was the parallels to today. And some things just never change. And these were two women, one black, one white, wanting to be friends, coming from different worlds, seeing the same situation very differently, and trying to work it out. And that's all they made a lot of mistakes with each other, but we make mistakes with our friends all the time. The stakes are just higher if it's racially based. And then they just figured it out. One of the things I loved about the research that we did and found was that they were two people who weren't afraid to have the hard conversations. And we're hoping that when people read this book, that they'll find somebody of a different race to read with and to discuss, and it'll open up the doors for those hard conversations.
Joshunda.
So I think, when I think about Charity Adams and other pioneers, Black women pioneers, I think there's an expectation for there to be this sort of dignity and poise in the face of continued disrespect and dehumanization and demeaning conduct on behalf of others, specifically white people and specifically white men in the military. And what I appreciated about that moment for her was that she remained respectful and composed, but she also drew a line in the stand, and sort of said, I'm not gonna let you just tell me that I'm not doing a good job, because I am. And you're not gonna put somebody else in here that's not me, unless you plan to drag me out. And that's a great moment because it's actually a real life thing that she said, and it became legendary among the women underneath her, because to me, that's the main piece of it, right? Is that other people are watching. It's not just that I'm doing this for myself so that you don't disrespect me. It's that there are 900 Black women here, basically, almost, and they have descendants, and you will not disrespect them, and you will not disrespect the people who come after them, right? So she's making that stand not just for herself, but it's for everybody else. It's for the generations. And that to me is phenomenal and powerful.
She's being her sister's keepers, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Maggie, Lena. Ruth, would you share with us how you think Maggie navigated those challenges?
Because My mic, okay. Read the question, please, again.
Sure. Can you speak to how Maggie navigated her confrontations, how she handled the challenges of the world and led us forward?
Well, I just read you an excerpt about Maggie Lena Walker. You got to understand that this is somebody who was before her time. She was a woman that had a vision, but she also was not afraid. And I think fear is the one thing that keeps most of us from being successful. And Maggie was not fearful. And the only way she couldn't have been fearful, she had to have been tapped into a supernatural power, God, the universe. Whatever you want to call them, that's who she had to be tapped into. Because what she did was something that was, to me, second to Harriet Tubman. And the reason why I say that is because Harriet Tubman trudged through uncharted territory to free the slaves. But if you understand economics, if you have no money and you're not able to do too much of anything, and Maggie Lena Walker did the same thing to free our minds so that we could have businesses, establish a bank, so that we could have businesses, and we would have a place that would loan us money to get established. And Jackson Ward became the Black Wall Street of the South because of it. And so when we think about women, even now, when there's a woman in power or in leadership, she really have a very hard time getting money from the banks, getting money to keep her business running, even asking for investors. They're more apt to give men money than women money. So to me, she represents a pioneer of economics in America. We wouldn't have a checkbook without Maggie Lena Walker. Black people wouldn't know how to put money in the bank. When she taught her little children to save a penny and tell them what a penny could buy at that time. A penny couldn't buy very much, but it could buy a potato, a loaf of bread. 5 cents could get you a loaf of bread. So understanding the value of a dollar is more important to me than anything, because this world in which we live, as any color, any black, white women understand this as well, it's about capitalism. And if you don't understand the finances involved, it's not going to help you. And she did something that nobody was thinking about. We were thinking about being domesticated, working for somebody, being a servant. She was thinking about being a leader, owning a business. So that's what I think she gave to the world.
Right. Economic freedom, second only to that physical freedom. Great, great. Well, this is a great conversation, but we are kind of running out of time, so I want to kind of bring it into the future a little bit. Thankfully, today we seem to be having a wider cultural conversation about American Black women than in the past. Do you find parallels between the struggles your protagonists faced when they were alive to what we read in the news nowadays about Black women?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt fought like the devil to get rid of lynching. And they fought to get a lynching bill in the late 1930s. And they fought and fought and fought for that lynching bill, and they couldn't get it passed. Because FDR wanted to fight to employ people. And he could either fight for the lynching bill or he could fight for the New Deal. It wasn't both. And so they cried together over the lynching bill not being passed. And I often wonder what they would have thought when this happened in 1935, what they would have thought that the lynching bill did not pass until 2022. That's something that's going on today.
That is today. Joshunda, would you like to respond to that? And if you need me to repeat the question, just let me know.
Yeah, could you reread it?
Okay. I want to ask you if you see parallels between the struggles your protagonists faced when they were alive to what we read in the news nowadays about Black women.
I think it's really hard for people to give Black women credit for the work that we do and the ways that we lead and the people that we are. And what I mean by that is, I think that the support that the 6888 gave to our troops back then is similar to the way that Black women hold up the infrastructure of pretty much every industry in this country, and people still refuse to give us credit. They look at someone like Claudine Gay or Kamala Harris, and they find ways to discredit the ways that we add to the equation and the context in which we are operating, the traditions in which we operate. I think that that's just gonna be how it is. I think we're not meant, Audre Lorde said, you have to thrive knowing that you were not meant to survive. We operate in places that were not built for us, and we thrive in them, and that continues to be the case whether or not people give us credit or not.
Thank you. And so, Ruth, what parallels do you see between what your protagonists faced and Black women today?
That was back in 1903. It's 2024. Women are still struggling. All women. Not just Black women, all women. But Black women especially, because we have been limited to our resources or to understanding. Because men, and I'm not bashing men, it's just that this is a man's world. James Brown said it better than anybody. But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl, okay? So, yes. And just like you just heard Vicki say how FDR didn't want the lynching bill passed, but the women did, right?
The women did. Yes, the women did.
Mm-hmm. See, we've been doing this for a long time, and we're still fighting the same battle that we fought 100 years ago. It's just at a more intelligent level. So now we have to get to a point where we understand where we are. We know that we got to come together to get it done. And we can't have a whole lot of fear and doubt, because the fear and doubt is what's keeping us from getting there. Because everybody's ashamed or afraid to ask. They don't want nobody to know that they started from the bottom, now I'm here. I don't have a problem with it. I let you know straight up. And I let you know that it's a long road to get to any place that you want to be. And for us especially, the challenge is very difficult. So I just want to say nothing has really changed, but but we've gotten better. We've gotten better, but it hasn't changed. We still face the same challenges that we did in 1800, now in 2024.
Thank you. Well, this has been an inspirational conversation for me, for sure, and I wish we could go on a lot longer, but you have a room full of readers and supporters here, and I know that they would like to have a moment to ask you questions. So we're going to open up to questions right now. Clay is in the back with a microphone. If you would just raise your hand, he will make his way to you, and please remember to hand the microphone back to him so he can move on to the next question. And we have one right in the front, Clay. Please share who your question is for, or if you want all of them to respond.
Okay, first of all, thank you, ladies. That was very riveting. I really appreciate it. One of the things I'm interested in is how these women that you lifted up intersected. Ruth, I've been dying to ask you since I read your book whether Maggie Lena and Madam Walker ever knew each other. I'm also really interested in whether Eleanor Roosevelt played a role in the 688. Yeah, I love that. And so I'm just really curious about how these women, is there any research or anything to share about how these women may have interacted?
It's really interesting. I just finished my third historical fiction, and all of these, especially if you're going to be writing from the 1920s and the 1940s, they all intersected. Mary McLeod Bethune was best friends with Maggie, right? But she was outside of my storyline, but they were best friends. Mary McLeod Bethune had a lot to do with not only Black women being able to be in the military, but Black men, the Tuskegee Airmen. That was all Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt. What I love about historical fiction is reading all these books and watching, and then in our own research, discovering the intersections of all of these women.
Yes. Mary McLeod Bethune was Maggie Lena Walker's best friend. Mary McLeod Bethune was 11 years younger than Maggie Lena Walker. But they were best friends. They took vacations together. They sat down and they had conversations along with Booker T. Washington and other people who, George Washington Carver. I mean, it was always W.E.B. Du Bois. Everybody was a part of the same team, so to speak. They were different age groups. Mary was going back and forth to Florida. Maggie Lena Walker was in Richmond, Virginia. W.E.B. Du Bois was out there fighting for people to be in the military, talking about the talented 10th. Then you had Booker T. George Washington Carver, who was talking about let's get a skill. There was always conflict, but they always were very good friends, and they made things happen. And people seem to believe that just because Victoria wrote a book about Eleanor Roosevelt's friendship with Mary McLeod Bethune, that Mary McLeod Bethune and Maggie Lena Walker didn't make a lot of decisions together as well. And they did, at each other's homes. So, and when it comes to the military, we know for sure that we had two different points of view about how we were going to treat each other in the military, how we were going to, we had Booker T. Washington telling them, telling the military, telling the president, listen, we're not going to let you're not going to treat our troops a certain way when we come over to fight. I mean, we had so much going on at the same time across the country. We had Ida B. Wells up in Chicago telling people what to do. I mean, and she was a badass, she really was, all by herself. So we had people everywhere that were very good friends. Ann Spencer from Lynchburg, Virginia, used to host them at her home, right on Pierce Street, right, Tommy Jr.? Tommy used to live he knows her personally. So these are the things that he knows the family personally. These are the things that took place. Everybody, all of our books are integrated in some way. I don't know how in all ways, but in some ways we're integrated because all of them were friends. And you cannot do anything by yourself.
Joshunda, did you want to respond to that? Okay.
No, they
All
covered
right.
it.
Anybody else have a question? We've got one there and then one here, Clay, and I think that might, one more up front. That might be all we have time for.
Thank you so much for your presentations. And so I have a question about genre. So why historical fiction? Because in any of these instances, you could have written biographies. So I'm wondering, what does historical fiction allow you to do uniquely that you can't do in another genre?
I'd love to answer this question because I feel like there are 20 million books written by white people about World War II. And they mostly focus on the white male experience. And so therefore, in my imagination, and I think in the greater American imagination, what a patriot looks like is a white man from World War II. But to go into the archive, essentially, and in this beautiful building and being here in DC, makes me think of the archive and the archives. But the archives of Black women's inner lives are missing from that story. And so in order to recreate that, I have the details and I can piece them together and I can watch, the Ken Burns documentaries and the things, but none of that tells me where did the Black women get their hair done in Birmingham, England in 1944? What did they do for fun? How did they kiki and kick it when they were not working? Those are the things that I think the archive needs to humanize us, to reintroduce us to American history and to say that this is also what a patriot looks like, is that we can pass around a mason jar of moonshine after hours. We can also go to the officers' balls and all the things. And I think it rounds out and completes the story of who we are in America, and that to me is so valuable. A biography is also very rich and important, but getting to that inner life and the joy and the emotional experience, you can't really find that it's not factual. Those facts are not evident there, and so historical fiction really allowed me to build that.
And I can answer this very quickly, too. You said because we could have just as easily written biographies. No, we couldn't. I lie for a living. I write fiction. And so I absolutely love to tell the same story with the joy and the feelings and the emotions that are missing in a biography. I don't write truth at all.
Humanization is everything. Thank you. Clay, there's a question up here.
Ladies, I just wanted to address the fact that Mary McLeod Bethune and Maggie Lena Walker and all of these beautiful Black women that were fighting during this time, could you address the parallel that they had to fight against their own race with their men who were just saying, stay in your place, instead of supporting them and watching them go to the end line? I mean, it was very motivating in A Right-Worthy Woman, where Armstead had her back 10,000 times over. But then you had the other men who were telling her, sit down somewhere. So I'm just trying to figure out, where do you get your motivating factor there? Because are you out to fight with the white man and show him we can do it? Or should you say to the Black man, see, I told you I could do it?
Well, let me just answer that question. Actually, Armstead was exactly like I wrote him in the book. I talked to the family members after writing the book, not before. And I was told, how did you get my great-great-grandfather so well? Well, I researched him. He had to be very secure. He had to be very confident. He had to have his own. Because how could you not have all these things and accept a woman that's doing what Maggie Lena Walker did. And most women, and anybody in here own their own businesses, women, show of hands, please. Okay. Okay, we got some women in here that own your own businesses. And you know, in owning your own business, sometimes you get called all kinds of things that you're not. You're called the B word. Yeah, no, not to your face. Not to your face, but certainly they say it. They say that you're acting like a man. You think that, and you've heard that before, right? Okay, so I'm not wrong. They say a lot of things about women when they're trying to do some things, because women are supposed to fit in a box. We don't fit in a box. We're there to support you men, but we're also there to lead too. And if you are strong in your own abilities and you know who you are, you can accept us as we do the things we need to do to move us, to propel us forward in life. Because I wrote about Maggie Lena Walker and what she went through because she was multi-raced. I mean, she had a white father and a black mother. But what about the white women, too, who had to keep their waist together and sit at home all day and look good for these men when they came home? I mean, didn't they have a brain? Yes. But could they use it? No, because men wouldn't allow it to happen. And black women, they had to cook, clean, do the other things with their man, satisfy him as well, right? I mean, yeah, I got to be real with you. Come on now. They got to do all of this with no recognition. So they decided, look, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do my thing. I have a vision for America. I want to see America move forward. I want to see us treated right. As you can see today, women are always the people that's behind the bills being passed in Congress. Anything that happens in America, women come together and make it happen. I mean, we do. That's what we do. We get together as sisters. We become one then and make it happen. So, definitely. Am I talking too much?
Oh, no. We would love to listen all night. However,
I would just like to say for all the men who are here, thank you for coming.
Yes. All right.
I really am happy you're here.
You turncoat.
So unfortunately, that is all the time that we have. I just want to say to you ladies, the conversation has been enlightening, it's been inspirational, and it has been entertaining. Thank you very much. Audience, can we thank our panel tonight?